Today, we are projecting PPR scoring totals for a few guys we think could be league winners. So, Cynthia, start us off.
I'm going with Kenyan Drake, who you can probably get in the, or maybe even third round, depending on who you're playing with, which is a really big win if you're going to get 315 points from him. That's my projection. This is a fast-paced offense. This is a very difficult division that they play in. They're going to rely on Drake. Since he was traded from Miami to Arizona, you see that outside rushing. He was awesome at it. He got going fast, lots of big chunk gains, and red zone use. I love this projection for this season.
Well, I'm going to go up to Minnesota, and I'm going to look at Adam Thielen, who I think sort of got forgotten a little bit because he had a bad year last year, was hampered by injuries, did not play particularly well. But this year, I think he's ready for a bounce back in a huge way. I've got him at right around 275 fantasy points. He will have to pick up the slack early on this season for Stephon Diggs, who is now in Buffalo. And there's a very good chance Adam Thielen could see maybe 30% or more of the targets from Kirk Cousins in the first part of the season.
Marcus, I'm going to go with Robert Woods of the Los Angeles Rams, who at the end of last season was one of the best receivers in all of fantasy football. As a matter of fact, from weeks 11 on, he was the wide receiver 5. He was more than doubling the targets of Cooper Kupp, who was on the other side. I understand that he does not have the touchdown volume of a lot of these guys, but the one thing is, he did so well last year without getting those touchdowns. He was not touchdown dependent. If he can kind of progress, as Marcus said the other day, just increase those touchdown targets slightly, he could end up with around 300 fantasy points this season. I am targeting Robert Woods all over the place.
We're going to go through the top wideouts in the game, break them down by target draft rounds. So, Cynthia, looking at the first round, who are the receivers who make the cut for you?
I'm giving you 3. One's the obvious one in Michael Thomas. Got it. Next up, I have Devontae Adams. And then after that, Julio Jones. I think everyone always kind of forgets about Julio Jones because he's been awesome and we maybe take him for granted. But I think this season you're going to have an uptick for Julio because the O-line is healthy. Atlanta needs that O-line to keep Matt Ryan upright. Last season, Matt Ryan took his lowest percentage of deep passes. So realistically, that's going to go back up with more time.
Well, I'm going to go and look at the guys in round 2. We'll start with Tyreek Hill, DeAndre Hopkins, another guy in that second round, Chris Godwin, Kenny Golladay, and then Godwin's teammate, Mike Evans. But Tyreek Hill, for me, is sort of a fringe kind of end of round 1, start of round 2 guy. So if he falls to you in round 2, be thankful for it. I mean, this is a guy who is one of the primary options in the most dynamic offense in the league. He's got a fairly safe floor week to week, and we know the ceiling is way, way up there. So, like I said, if he falls to you in the second round, be thankful for that because this is a guy who has a whole lot of production ahead of him. Rank, who do you got in round 3?
Well, I agree with Kenny Golladay and Mike Evans. I think those are great players. If we're lucky enough to get them in the third round, I would definitely target them there as well. But I'm looking at guys like Allen Robinson. I'm a big proponent of Odell Beckham Jr. I also like Juju Smith-Schuster with the bounce back. DJ Moore was great at the end of last season. And, of course, my guy Bob Woods. I'm probably going to reach for him a little bit. But one guy I really want to focus in on is right here, Allen Robinson. And I know a lot of people have apprehension for the Bears offense, but think of what he was able to do last year with below replacement level quarterback play. And then you have guys like OBJ, you saw him there. Juju was playing with Mason Rudolph for crying out loud. So I believe that if you can get some solid quarterback play, and again, like all of these guys, DJ Moore was playing with a below NFL replacement level quarterback, and then Robert Woods was the only guy playing with a competent guy, but still he was kind of playing with West Coast Trubisky, so let's not get too crazy about that. But Allen Robinson is somebody that I really like this upcoming season.
Let's just dive into it. We're going to talk about quarterbacks here, right? Who should be the number 1 quarterback off the board? Give me checks. Your initials are KC. I know the team that's closest to your heart is in KC. I'm asking you this question, even though I know what the answer is going to be already, but Kimmy, the floor is yours.
Well, I like to think that you went to me first because you know the answer is obvious since we just showed Patrick Mahomes. I am the biggest Kansas City Chiefs homer ever, but this is not just a biased take. Patrick Mahomes is going to be the number 1 fantasy quarterback this season. Now, I know there's a debate between him and Lamar Jackson, Lamar Jackson is the guy who can throw the ball, but he can also rush. However, he went on record to say he's not going to be rushing the ball as much this season. You know who is going to be doing a little bit more of that? It's going to be my guy, $500 million Patrick Mahomes. Now, if you think back to those postseason wins against the Houston Texans and the Tennessee Titans, Patrick Mahomes rushed for over 100 yards. Now, he can rush the ball. You know what he can also do? He can throw dimes. The Chiefs' offense is stacked this season, and I presume that the Kansas City Chiefs will be the top scoring offense. So why would you, as a fantasy owner, not want a little piece of heaven? Plus, when you're worth $500 million, I think that puts a little extra pep in your step, and you know that you want to make fantasy fans happy. So I am all in on Patrick Mahomes. I know that is no surprise to either of you. We got the KC repping behind me, but it does not matter. Patrick Mahomes all the way, the #1 fantasy quarterback this upcoming season.
You know, and I'll say this about Lamar Jackson. I recently participated in a super flex league where you can play 2 quarterbacks, and I took Lamar Jackson in the first round. So I don't have anything against him. I was an advocate of him last season. I had him in a lot of my leagues. But the only reason I took him in that Superflex league in the first round is because somebody already took Patrick Mahomes. And that is the guy that I want to go with. So I love Lamar Jackson. Don't get it wrong. But I just feel that Patrick Mahomes and what he was able to do is easier to duplicate. Lamar Jackson, I'm not sure he's going to rush for that many touchdowns. They drafted J.K. Dobbins. That could eat into some of his rushing totals. Patrick Mahomes, I feel like every time he steps on the field, he could pass for 4 touchdowns. As Kimmy said, he's a better runner than people give him credit for. And you look at this Chiefs offense, and now they are untethered. They don't have the weight of expectations. Andy Reid has been coaching for years with he's a great coach, but, well, now that's gone because he is a champion. I feel like we're going to see a better version of the Chiefs this season, and the quarterback I want is Patrick Mahomes.
So what I think I heard Adam Rank say is that Lamar Jackson is a flash in the pan, and folks in Baltimore should just forget about him and wish they had Joe Flacco back. I think that's what I took away from all that.
That's what they heard.
I am going to stand up for Lamar Jackson here because, yes, maybe he does rush less this year, but he still gives you an incredibly safe rushing floor. His rushing floor is sort of like that of an RB2 or maybe even a high-end RB3, which is pretty fantastic when you're talking about a quarterback. Then, as a passer, he's still giving you top 10, top 12 quarterback numbers. Then he combines like Voltron, the cool Lions, not those weird cars and trucks that they had. And he gives you the top quarterback overall type potential there. And yes, maybe he doesn't run as much this year. But the counterpoint to that is the Ravens say they want to throw the football more this year. We know what Mark Andrews can be. Marquise Brown says he's healthy after struggling with some injuries last year. So there are some opportunities for Lamar Jackson to kind of make up with his arm what he didn't do last year. So all those jokes about, hey, he's a pretty good quarterback for a running back, they're going to start to go away even more than what we saw last year. And I think Lamar Jackson is going to do what's been very difficult to do. That's repeat as the QB1. So I'm right. I'm right, and you guys are wrong. So what's old is new again. Elite running backs like Christian McCaffrey, Saquon Barkley, Alvin Kamara, they are dominating the first round once again. But the run on running backs is likely to extend into the second round. So we're going to sit here and we are going to separate the good from the meh. Kimmy, start us off. What is your best case scenario for round 2 running backs?
Now, my best case scenario is a guy who also just so happens to come from the Kansas City Chiefs. And again, this is not because I love the team. It's just because the team is just that darn good. It is Clyde Edwards-Hilaire. Now, we're talking about second round guys, but if people are smart, he may be someone who could actually go earlier in the first round. Now, the reason why I love Clyde, especially in this Chiefs offense, he is a 3-down back who can catch 90-plus passes out of the backfield while also rushing for hundreds of yards. Now, another thing that is in his favor is that Damian Williams has opted out of this upcoming season due to concerns over COVID-19. Now, what this means is he is going to get all of the offensive production for the Kansas City Chiefs at the running back position. Now, Patrick Mahomes, I talked about him earlier. In the 29 game starts that Patrick Mahomes has had since 2018, 39 of those touchdowns have gone to running back. So what does that mean for Clyde Edwards-Hilaire? He is going to get all of the juice and all of the fun, and you want every single part of that as a fantasy owner. So he went from the best quarterback in college football in Joe Burrow to now arguably the best quarterback in the NFL in Patrick Mahomes. So all eyes are on Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
Well, I'm going to go and pump up Kenyan Drake. And we heard Cynthia talk about him in the first segment of this show, and I completely agree that this is the guy who has the potential to be a league winner. When he got to Arizona last season, he immediately took over the majority of the backfield snaps, played about 80% of the snaps with the Cardinals last season. There's no competition back there. Chase Edmonds is strictly a backup for this Cardinals offense. In this up-tempo attack that Cliff Kingsbury has put together, chance for 300 touches, 50 to 60 catches, and had been going in the first round. I think CEH has sort of bumped him down to that early second, in which case that might be a little bit of a discount.
You know what, Marcus? It's funny because I see Clyde Edwards-Hilaire, I see Kenyan Drake as first-round guys, I see Josh Jacobs as a first-round guy. So if we're talking strictly second-rounders, I'm going to go with Miles Sanders. This has been a player that I've been advocating for the last couple of weeks, actually the last couple of months, since his hot finish at the end of last season when he took over the backfield role for the Philadelphia Eagles. So as hype as we are on him, and I'm not worried about injuries or anything, and then news breaks on Wednesday that he's going to be week to week with a lower body injury, but that is just something to monitor. This is why we draft closer to the start of the season. We've still got, a month to go or something like that. We've got plenty of time to see how this situation works out, and as long as he is ready to go in week one, Miles Sanders has the ability, especially in this offense, to be a top 5 running back, especially with all the injuries at the wide receiver position. I love getting Miles Sanders this season.
All right, so because we believe in equal time, we've talked about the good. Now we've got to talk about maybe the not so good. So, Kimmy, who is somebody that you're not all that fired up about in round 2?
Now, sadly, someone that I'm not so hype about this upcoming season in the second round is Joe Mixon. I'm excited for the Cincinnati Bengals. They now have Joe Burrow under center. But what does that mean for Joe Mixon? Well, people are excited about what that production could mean, but there's something that running backs really like. They, one, want to stay healthy, and two, they want to get paid and get that big contract. Now, there's already been conversations that this could be a potential holdout season for Joe Mixon. So with his stock that high, I don't quite know if I'm going to take a chance on it. This could be the season that you want to sit out because of concerns over COVID-19. So if this is a guy that you're targeting in the second round, and maybe someone you want to wait on, because hey, what is worse than drafting a guy and him holding out? Basically nothing. So that's just my thoughts. I think he's an incredible player, but I do have some concerns over if he will play or not.
Well, I've got some concerns about Leonard Cornett. Mostly, how can you like a running back that his own team doesn't seem to like? There's been nothing but talk this offseason about the Jaguars trying to move on from Fournette in one form or another. He had 100 targets last year. That seems nearly impossible now that the Jaguars have added Chris Thompson. They drafted Laviska Shenault. It seems like those guys will take a lot of those backfield targets that Fournette saw last season. So in other words, he's got to really make up for it in touchdown volume, and that's something that's been hard because his touchdown numbers have decreased each season he's been in the league.
You know, I'm going to be looking at Aaron Jones as a player that I'm going to avoid this season. Obviously, 19 touchdowns last year helped get you to a fantasy title, but there's a number of things that are working against him. As you see right there, his rushing yards per game were the fewest amongst top 5 running backs. Also, there is going to be some heavy regression, too. He is not going to score 19 touchdowns this season. He got a bulk of those touchdowns in games without Devontae Adams. He had about double-digit touchdowns in about 5 games, so I'm going to avoid this season.
Hey, rookies, it's time to raise your game, presented by EA Sports Madden NFL 21. We welcome Cynthia Freeland back, and we're picking out our favorite rookie receivers for fantasy. Cynthia, go.
I like CeeDee Lamb. Why? Because I like when there's 3 receiver sets and people like to throw the ball and West Coast offenses, which is exactly what the Cowboys have. I like the fact that, look, the other 2 receivers there, Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, have been excellent, which means defensive backs are going to be drawn to them, leaving my slot guy, CeeDee Lamb from Oklahoma, open and ready to catch those passes for you. So for me, CeeDee Lamb, number 1 rookie wide receiver this season. I think you should keep him for dynasty leagues. I'm all over this guy.
Well, I'm going to go with Justin Jefferson. I don't think he has the highest ceiling of anyone in this class, but I think he has the best opportunity in year one. I talked about Adam Thielen and how he's going to have to shoulder a lot of the burden in the passing game there in Minnesota, but Jefferson looks like he could end up as the team's slot receiver, especially if they go to more 3 wide receiver sets. And Kirk Cousins generally has had a narrow focus, so if he likes you, he's going to throw the ball your direction quite a bit. And I think Justin Jefferson could see quite a few targets in his first year there with the Vikings.
I popped for that joke, Marcus, but I like Jalen Reagor for the Philadelphia Eagles. I was kind of surprised that the Eagles didn't select Justin Jefferson, but it kind of makes sense because Reagor is going to be that kind of player they can move all over the field. And what I'm really looking at here, these other 2 players might be more talented. I really love the opportunity in this Eagles offense. They've had injury concerns with Alshon Jeffrey, Deshaun Jackson. Now, we talked about Miles Sanders earlier in the show. He could end up being the most targeted receiver for the rookies this year. So when I'm looking around, and especially if I can stack him with Carson Wentz, Jalen Reagor is my first receiver off the board this year.
How's anybody feeling about Jerry Judy? Do we like him this year?
I personally do.
You said that as though you met him. You said that as though you met him and he was a nice gentleman.
Well, I will say this. I know that a lot of the Broncos veterans have really been talking him up. I think they were saying that he's making them better and things like that. I understand he's got a lot to deal with there, but I still like him as a talent.